Hey, and welcome back to this episode of the Business Real Talk. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about what I call conditioned buying and why this is the answer to getting your audience to actually buy from you without long sales cycles or spending endless amount of time trying to nurture them to get there. But before we jump in, it's a friendly reminder that this is the fourth and final episode of a 4-part series. And during this 4-part series, I've been breaking down for you the sales system that I and my clients have been able to use to close more premium clients without needing to get on more sales calls. Now, if you're just jumping in, I highly recommend you hit pause, you go back to the first episode in this series, the passive and active decision making and sales system. But if you have been following along and you do understand everything we've talked about up until this point, then I want to give you a quick little refresher on what we've talked about, because everything we're talking about compounds on top of the next piece, and it's all going to come together on this week's episode. So we started off the series by talking about the reason why you're ultimately attracting those freebie seekers, AKA what we call low intent leads. It's because you're using low intent messaging. I also shared with you exactly how you can now develop high intent messaging so that you can attract those clients who are ready to invest within days of meeting you and that they see you as a gift they are thankful to have. Now, building upon this, we talked about our pre-selling episode where we discussed the difference between pre-qualifying versus pre-selling, how you can actually focus on having clients that are sold before the call by leveraging a pre-selling system. And on that episode, I dropped the truth bomb that pre-qualifying leads are actually killing your sales. And somewhere along the line, we were told that pre-qualifying our leads was the answer to getting them ready to buy. And inevitably, we got on the phone, they hit us with an objection, and we kind of started to feel like, what am I doing wrong here? So let's frame it like this. Your pre-qualified buyer may have the means, but they don't necessarily have the intent. So the reason you're getting objections is that the pre-qualifying process is focusing on you and what you need out of that prospect, not what your client needs. Now, what we discussed instead is why a pre-selling system ultimately allows you to develop that messaging, that positioning, and your sales process that brings you ready to invest leads who have this very sophisticated way of making buying decisions, and how we can tailor our process to these people who make these incredible buying decisions quickly and swiftly so they can arrive on your sales calls pre-sold. Now, finally, last week, we had a juicy conversation about how we can actually obliterate objections and address them before they even come up and what that process actually looks like to get them there. At its core, let's be real, objection obliteration just means becoming strategic. So your sales process isn't just about a transactional relationship, but a relational one. And knowing that it's a journey that's an enjoyable experience where your prospect is eager and excited to say yes because they see the possibility and the result they want. And instead of hard sales and pain points, you're leveraging what we call guided decision making so that it works with their natural behavior, leading to faster sales, less pressure, and less resources. This has all been the healthy marriage between marketing and sales. Now, wow, we covered so much over the last 3 episodes. And we could absolutely stop here. And if you went to go implement the system exactly as I've described it, you would already see a huge increase in not only your conversions, but you'd start to like your sales calls again. Because when you're getting on sales calls and getting yeses 9 out of 10 calls you take, then let's be real, sales calls just become fun. But here's the thing. When I go out for lunch, I want some extra guac. And when I order dessert, I want some whipped cream and extra fudge. So when I share with you on this podcast series that creating an easy yes sales system, I want to give you some extra guac. I want to give you the fudge, the whipped cream, and a take-home box of your favorite meal so you can eat it for lunch tomorrow. So we're going to take this one step further. So on today's episode, we're going to cover what I've actually never shared outside of my paid programs and what I call conditioned buying. So I need to have some real talk conversation between the two of us. Have you ever just had a client that ended up being way outside of your boundaries, where maybe they're calling and they're texting and they're messaging you all hours of the night or on weekends or on holidays, and they're expecting an immediate response? And maybe you haven't had this with a client. Kudos to you, because I have. And maybe instead you've had this happen with a friend or a family member. And I'm guessing that we've all found ourselves in that kind of situation at some point in time. And look, it's really healthy for us to vent because it can be frustrating and stressful, and business is hard enough doing it on our own. But once we're done blowing off steam and relating to each other, we need to have this real talk moment and ask ourselves this question. In what way am I responsible for this situation? Because owning that is how we actually prevent it from happening again. And I'm guessing that it probably went a little something like this. That person didn't start off doing all the things that frustrate you all at once. It probably escalated and built up over time. But as they say, when there is smoke, there is fire. So there were probably some early warning signs from the very beginning. And chances are that it started by us not setting our boundary from the beginning or not upholding them when they were being pushed. And stick with me because I'm absolutely going to show you how this is happening in our sales process right now. Now, I'm guessing that when that person first came to you, they maybe tested your boundaries and you probably said to yourself, okay, it's just a one time thing. I'm going to respond so that there's no drama and it'll just be this one time situation. And then the person did it again. And maybe they did it again. And we respond and we meet with them outside of our boundaries. And once they've tested those waters, they probably escalated it further. And then before you know it, there's no more boundaries and things have gotten totally out of control. In other words, if we're honest with ourselves, we conditioned that person to believe that we're okay with them stepping outside of our boundaries. Maybe not okay with it, but we made a couple of passive aggressive comments, or maybe we even tried to insinuate that we weren't okay with it. But because we were never clear and firm, we ended up just silently resenting the person and it continued to get worse and worse. Now, shout out to all my recovering people pleasers because that's me. I'm not trying to victim blame or shame anyone here. But as coaches, as thought leaders, and as service providers, it's important and it's healthy for us to understand that our clients often look to us for what boundaries are. And our reaction and our ability to maintain those boundaries will ultimately condition people's behaviors. Now, this doesn't just hold true for the delivery of our services or our course or our coaching program. This is also true for the buying process itself. Your audience, your potential clients, your leads are ultimately being conditioned on how you want them to treat you all the way from the very first second they're introduced to you through your marketing and content and sales process. In other words, your audience has a learned behavior when it comes to how they interact and ultimately buy from you. This is why I call it our conditioned buying. Remember how I talked about the perfect marriage between marketing and sales? That holistic process and the intention and strategy behind it tells your audience how you want them to treat you. Said in another way, it conditions them subconsciously on what actions you want them to take from the very first interaction with you. Many people have learned to condition their audience to be content consumers, freebie seekers, and lurkers. This is why right now you have an audience full of lurkers rather than buyers. It's why your sales cycle takes forever and you feel like you're constantly having to build your audience and fill your pipeline. And the main reason why so few people in your audience are actually buying. You see, this frustration and feeling of being taken advantage of can permeate all aspects of your business. And it's honestly one of the biggest reasons for that burnt out and cash flow stress in your business because it sets off this chain reaction that you're constantly feeling this pressure to create more content in hopes that it brings in more lurkers and maybe nurtures these lukewarm leads that you already have. Now, there's a ton of readily available advice out there on how you can solve this problem. But honestly, I'm going to keep it real with you. Most of the advice of what you're seeing out there is also what actually created the problem to begin with. So let's do this little experiment here with me. Okay. If you're not driving, take out your phone right now, get on Facebook or on IG. And I bet within just a 2-minute period, you're going to see ads that say something like, what you need is more leads, build your audience and more people, give away more free stuff. And if you continue to scroll just a little bit more and to make things just a tad bit more confusing, you'll see advice that tells you that you should stop offering free stuff and instead make all your sales calls paid, make workshops that are paid, everything paid. And hey, here's another one. You need to have this low ticket offer because you need to bring people in the door and then you need some sort of complicated ascension model on the back end. Or maybe you'll see an ad that tells you that the success lies in offering that bro marketing promise of a 10K guarantee, some variation of your success is guaranteed or you don't pay. Or you might see one of those most repeated pieces of advice. Customers only buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so you need to be patient because it takes people 90 plus days to know that they will like and trust factor and buy from you. Now, let's take a collective sigh of relief because that's a lot of information and people sure want to give you a lot of advice in hopes that you're going to hand them over some money. So I'm going to let you in on a little secret on this episode right here. All of this advice isn't just confusing and contradictory, it's also misleading. The reason people aren't buying is actually really simple. It's because you've conditioned them to not buy from you. Harsh but true, hear me out. Instead, you've taught them that when it comes to your business, they should enter your space as a freebie seeker and that they should take and consume and practically suck you dry of free information with no intention of buying. And let's name that pain point or desperate broke language marketing for what it really is, a short sighted strategy that maybe gave you a ton of cheap leads, but always catches up with you because it only attracts those desperate and demanding people who want you to solve their problems immediately, or they're going to go and charge back. What a surprise. Now, let's take a pause while I take a quick sip of my tea here. I was just talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and I was asking her about how I'm really not trying to be this person who talks smack about all the big name gurus and coaches, but I am here to keep it real. Okay. But honestly, there's just so much advice out there that I see actually tarnishing people's reputations, hurting their businesses, and it's misleading at best. But oftentimes in reality, they're deceitful tactics designed to part you with your cash as quickly as possible. So if you take nothing else from this episode, let it be this. People who are brand new to your program can buy your high ticket program in a matter of hours if you learn to condition them to buy. And I want to say it just one more time because I want you to unlearn everything you've heard up until this point. And I want it to wash over you and for you to recognize and hear this because business doesn't have to be so difficult. People who are brand new to you can buy your high ticket program in a matter of hours if you can condition them to buy. Notice how I didn't say if you do some sleazy pain point BS guarantee tactics. The way that we actually do this is creating intentional and strategic systems that marries your marketing and sales and creates a way that conditions your clients to see you as the incomparable one and only solution that they're there to come buy from, not just hang out and watch your content for free. Now, think of it this way, okay? I want you to think back to your childhood. Think of a teacher or a coach or a band or theater director, some adult who changed your life. I want you to picture them. Got them in mind? Okay, great. Now, I want you to think back to a teacher or coach or director who is maybe just a little bland, boring, nothing memorable. They don't really remind you of anything. And you probably wouldn't even remember them if I hadn't asked you to do this. Now, got them in mind? Maybe it's a little bit foggy. That's okay. Okay. Now, what's the difference between these two people? Why was one life changing and the other so forgettable? My guess is that the teacher who was forgettable creating an environment that was unintentional and lacked standards. And because of this, they conditioned everyone around them to just coast, to do the bare minimum, to perform their most lackluster. Now, on the other side of this, I'm guessing the teacher who was life changing was the teacher who went above and beyond. They were the teacher who saw something in you and strived to bring it out. They were the ones who cared. They were passionate about their craft. And I'm guessing that you may have sometimes even hated that teacher because they frustrated you. But at the core of it, I bet you they demanded excellence out of you and your peers, and that they created an environment that nurtured and brought out that excellence out in you. And slowly but surely, they conditioned you to see that potential in yourself. And they conditioned you to learn how to do whatever it took to bring that potential to life. You see, as thought leaders, as coaches, as service providers, our job is to create an environment and a process that conditions our clients to become their best. That is the power of conditioning. That the environment you create without you even having to say a word already starts to bring out the best in people. And I want you to begin to understand that this is conditioning. This is demanding excellence. It doesn't just start when your clients start to pay you and sign into your programs. It starts from the very first moment they see your content. It starts with your holistic marketing and sales process. It starts with you being that incomparable solution. You want to be the only solution that they can even see. You want to be the easy yes that turns those strangers who just met you into clients in a matter of hours or days. And it's not just that you need to wait for your program. You need to also realize that it's not just the program that's transformational, but your entire marketing and sales process that gets to be transformational. Then you need to start bringing out the very best in your audience from that very first introduction they have to you. And let's be real, being a lurker or a fence sitter, a freebie consumer, or one of those signer uppers for webinars or challenges or Facebook groups is actually not becoming an action taker. This is not people being their best. But just like our client that pushes our boundaries, we need to take responsibility from the environment that we're creating. And if we create a culture of passive consumption where people watch but don't take action, then we need to take a step back. We need to examine the ways we're conditioning people to be passive lurkers rather than active buyers. And if we want to bring out the best in people, if we want to have thriving communities that give you the energy and have you fulfilled and excited to show up every day, then we need to become intentional and strategic in the way we condition our customers from the very beginning of our holistic marketing and sales process. So let's get down to how this actually happens. If you don't already, pull up your notes or grab your pen and paper because we're going to break it all down. We need to start with the end in mind. Ultimately, I want you to ask yourself, what do you want the majority of people who enter into your world to do? This is where we think of the final destination. Now, when I ask people this question, they get really overwhelmed because maybe they have a multitude of offers or a bunch of different things people can do. And I just want to remind you that the more difficult and detours that you create throughout your process, the more difficult and detoured your audience will be to getting there. Okay. So I want you to try and create the straightest line to the destination you want them to go to. Okay. So for me, it's my clients that I want them to be able to enter my Sustainable Profit Academy. Now, while I have 3 different ways for my clients to work with me, my final destination, the ultimate place that I want a majority of my audience to move to, is my Sustainable Profit Academy Mastermind. The reason why is because this is my flagship program and it truly takes people through their high intent messaging, developing their IP, AKA their innovative gap methodology, their marketing, their sales systems, the delivery systems, all of it. So from there, what I need to do is look and say, okay, what's the immediate step before them joining my program that I need people to take? For me personally, it's a call with me because my program is set up to ensure congruency and that I can ensure that they're a good fit for one of my programs and really direct them in the right capacity. And ultimately, in order to be offered a space into my program, is that they need to get on a call with me. So I know that that's the step right before they join a program. Okay. Now I keep taking each step in reverse, identifying the steps I want people to take. And once each step is mapped out, we now need to look at the very beginning of the process, all the way to that first introduction and what needs to happen in order for them to get to that last step of the puzzle piece. Okay. Most people haven't thought this piece through. Now, knowing the last step means that now we set up that first step and each subsequent step in a strategic and methodical way, like a treasure map. Okay. So you need to ask yourself, what is the first thing with your map in mind? What is the first thing I want people to do, feel, and achieve when they first meet me? Okay. This is specific and it's repeatable and it's an action they can do on their own because we want to make it a system and not like you handholding them every step of the way. So wherever they are, whenever they enter your world, they should be able to take this first step. Now, the goal with this is in identifying what you want people to do, feel, and achieve, we can now strategically identify how you can achieve that in your marketing and sales process. And then we repeat that question with each subsequent step leading to the final one. Now, to give you an example, I know that when I want people to come into my world and quickly identify who I am, what I do, how I do that. And I want them to know why that's the answer to their needs. I want that to happen almost immediately once they meet me. Okay. Now, while I may have several entry points, and most businesses should, and I talk a lot about this, meaning that people may find me through my one-touch content system and my shared content in other groups, or they may find me because of my lead generation process, or they may come to me because of my visibility content on the platform that I am. All of these pieces are curated within my one-touch content system. So they're all strategic. It all only requires me to create 3 to 4 pieces of content and therefore distribute that content in a way that brings people to me. So that's like the top of how people meet me, okay? But one of the first steps that I want people to take once they're introduced to me from some form of my one-touch content system is what I call my bingeable authority, aka my Netflix effect system. Why? Because this is what I call my big dose of me, where people can immediately be conditioned to learn to buy from me, not simply consume, while setting them up that foundation of being remembered. Because remember, your first impression matters. Now, next, what happens is that my one touch content system systematically teaches people to buy from me. They know that every action they take creates a reaction in my business. They know that every piece of content is setting them up to make a decision. They understand this. They're not fearing it. They're not feeling pressured. They know what they're coming here to do. They know that when I run a poll, that action and their response to that poll creates a direct result, aka training that I can create to that speaks to what they voted on. They get buy-in. They have the buy-in to engage, to show up, to buy from me. And each piece of content in my strategically planned content puzzle is conditioning them. So much so that people come to my DMs with the intent to buy. People come to my calls with the intent to buy. They're already asking themselves, they know what they need to be doing. They're not there to ask me questions or find excuses because I've already answered their questions. I've already calmed their objections and they feel ready. They feel like the natural course of action is that they've understood the information they needed and now they're moved to take an action. This is what my easy yes method is all about. Now, I know that today I'm sharing some tough love here, but I want you to know that this shift is much easier than you think, especially when you implement the easy yes method tools I've been sharing over the past episodes. And honestly, this shift not only allows you to finally make the impact you set out to have, but it relieves that cash flow stress you're experiencing and creates a repeatable and predictable process that both you and your audience come to look forward to. Just like my client, Jen, she found herself in this exact situation where her program was life changing, but she was conditioning her audience to remain in that passive user, AKA lurker category. She was conditioning them to learn to buy from her only when she ran her big, exhausting launches 3 times a year. And even then, if the timing didn't line up perfectly, people would wait and they would hesitate. She was frustrated and she wanted her efforts in marketing and sales to be rewarded with new, eager clients. Don't we all want that? And she didn't just want people to say, I love your content or I'll get in next time. Once she implemented the Easy Yes method, her audience shifted. Each week, they were raising their hands, asking to apply to her programs. Each week, people who had been lurking for months or years were now actively engaging and saying, I'm ready to work with you. People were being conditioned to buy. And she was able to quit her exhausting live launches and focus on bringing new clients every single week. And she felt amazing because her actions were being rewarded and marketing and sales began to feel fun again. Here's the thing. If you found yourself with a list of lurkers or you have content that has gone viral or is getting a ton of engagement, but isn't actually resulting in any sales, then it's likely that your client acquisition system isn't set up to get people to buy. It's simply set up to get people to mooch off of you. Okay. The shift you need to make is to start looking at conversions and acquiring clients holistically from that very first impression you make. And that's the fastest indicator of how quickly people will buy from you. The truth is, the concept of classical conditioning that has been used in psychology for years can easily be applied to business. When you condition your audience with a setup process of events that elicit a conditioned response, they learn how to buy from you. From the very first episode in this series, my goal has been to show you the way that sales and marketing are traditionally taught as what most of us stressed and ready to give up. Traditionally, sales has been taught from the perspective of what happens after marketing, and marketing has been taught from what happens before sales. Instead, marketing and sales have to become a team in order for this to happen. Think of your favorite meal. Imagine if you went out to your favorite restaurant and ordered that meal and they brought out each ingredient on its own separate plate. I don't know about you, but I don't want to eat 2 teaspoons of paprika on its own or eat an entire onion by itself. Or how about a couple of habanero peppers served on a plate for you? I mean, that's okay, but no, thank you. When you put it all together, when you fried it and you mix it and you let it simmer and then add the right amount of salt and spiciness and flavor, then bring it out to me. When all of it comes together and works together as one, not as individual parts separated from each other, but when it all comes together. Yes, that is when you have a taste bud masterpiece and your high intent targeting, your marketing pre-selling system, your sales, your conditioning, your objection obliteration. When you start separating it into individual ingredients and serving each piece of that separately and start simmering it all together as one delicious holistic meal, that's when the magic happens. This is the easy yes method. Okay. This is the approach and the system that's going to transform your business. And as a quick recap of what this looks like, there's three core parts to this. The first part is really being able to have the messaging and being able to be positioned in a way that your audience deems as being the only solution. We do this by developing what we call innovative gap methodology that truly articulates where the gap in the marketplace is, creates your own intellectual property, AKA your innovative gap methodology, so that you have a methodology that you now share with your audience that details exactly how you solve a problem in a way that nobody else in the industry can. The next step in this process is having the client acquisition system. This is where we look at how we leverage our marketing that feeds into our sales and feeds into the delivery of an incredible world-class result for each and every one of our clients. We call this the bingeable authority system. And it's exactly what it does is it allows your audience to come into your world, quickly binge you, and make easy and empowered decisions that lead to a pre-sold client before they even get on a sales call. This is where the Netflix effect comes into play and how we leverage sales psychology to effectively move them to a yes without you hand-holding them every single step of the way. And ultimately, it leads to what we call results and retention, which is where we actually look at how you can actually deliver those results at scale with your audience so that you're getting your clients world-class results without you needing to handhold them even throughout the delivery system. We do this by creating what we call one offer framework and pairing that with what we call results mechanisms. These simply put allow your audience to get incredible results by having a process that delivers those results at scale. That in its entirety is what we call the easy yes method. Now, what I want to do is I want to ask you that if you can share what stood out for you the most in the last 4 episodes. What was your biggest aha or takeaway about what I've shared with you here today? And as always, if you want to learn how you can apply the easy yes method, how 400 plus of my clients have been able to leverage this, we have a few more options for you. Now, number one, you can listen to those past episodes. Be sure that you subscribe so that you get on our future Real Talk episodes as soon as they're released. Number two, if you want to learn right away, then head over to my bingeable mini series where I break down an entire easy yes method if you haven't already. That's at easyesleads.com. Or option number three, for my go-getters who know that they're ready to take that next step. They believe that success is no longer optional and they want the step-by-step process that allows them to create the results they want in their business, land more predictable clients in their business without showing up on every platform or trying to go viral. And you want to learn exactly how you can leverage the Easy Yes method in your business. I want to invite you to a free blueprint call. On this call, I'm actually going to audit your entire client acquisition process right now. I'll show you exactly where the biggest gaps are, how you can fill for those gaps, and how my Easy Yes method can help you get there faster. To book your free blueprint call, go to easyesleads.com/call or check out the show notes to get your call. Now, on next week's episode, we're going to start a brand new series that's going to blow your socks off. And I'm going to give you a small little hint. I'm going to be giving you a behind the scenes look at the Easy Yes method. And I'm going to show you how it's helped over 400 coaches and business owners successfully create an Easy Yes sales system. So be sure to subscribe and tune in next week. And as always, we appreciate when you like, subscribe, and share with others because it allows us to support and serve so many others out there. But until next time, here's to keeping it real.